Harvard students say they're all for renaming buildings and removing statues from campus deemed controversial, except when it comes to their school. Listen to this.
Yeah, I definitely agree because these schools market their names through their inclusivity.
I think it's an excellent idea.
A diverse group of people should be represented in any institution.
Would you be in favor of renaming the Harvard Kennedy School?
I don't know. I feel like that's still too imprecise.
Ooh, I'm not sure. That's a hard question to answer on the spot.
So in that case, I feel like you have to kind of separate political and personal. I'm not saying he's like a necessarily good person, but if he was a good president, then you have to take that into consideration.
Joining us to discuss is the man asking the questions in that video, Eduardo Neret, digital reporter at Campus Reform. Eduardo, good to see you. It must be tough when you hear these answers and you're sitting next to it because you see the hypocrisy right before your very eyes. Talk to me about that.
It is. So earlier this year, I went to Harvard University, and this was before what we're seeing right now, that students and colleges across the country are wanting to take down statues and change the names of buildings. But the reason why I went earlier in the year is because at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, we've shown how colleges and universities have been pushing this trend for a while. So at the time, I didn't even ask students about Confederates. I said, what about a statue of a founding father? What about a name of a building after a modern political figure like Clarence Thomas? And so you see in the video how they were quick to say, yes, we should take those down. And then when I asked them about their very own campus, when I asked them about the Kennedy School of Government, a lot of them stood back and said, well, wait, let's examine Kennedy holistically. Let's judge him for the context of what was acceptable during his times. And so they didn't see their own double standard, and they didn't see the irony that they were making the case as to why we should examine all statues holistically, why we should examine the entire context of these historical figures that now so many are demanding must be removed.
It's very interesting that you've asked this before, because if you're paying attention to the video, there's snow on the ground, so we know it's taken at a different time. And here it is front and center, this exact topic that you already covered with these woke college students. Do you think their answers would change today?
I think it's different now. I think, the emotional reaction to a lot of the racial protests we've seen across the country have pushed people even further to demand these things. We're seeing them take down statues of Abraham Lincoln. And so I think what's important to do is to ask students about an example in their own lives. It's important to point out of something in their own community. Would you be in favor of taking that down? Because as we saw in my video, that may be the best chance to get these students to think more critically about it. Maybe they'll step back and say, well, maybe I'm not for this so much. Because if we don't start doing that, if we don't start talking to people about examples in their own lives, or maybe examples of people who they actually think are positive, people who they think are good people, then these students are only going to continue to want to take down any statue, any building name of anything that they don't like. And we can't have that.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to talk to you about. Cancel culture, the cancel culture movement. It is leading some colleges to remove statues of mascots and change logos. We've seen it most recently. The University of Florida discontinued the use of a popular chant heard at football games. The school's decision was made in the interest of cutting ties to its reported racist origins here. As you see them, I forget what this is called. The Gator, what is it?
Gator bait.
Gator bait.
Gator bait. Yeah. So
talk to me about that.
That's my alma mater. So unfortunately, I have to look at that and see what they did there. But again, more examples. So schools are showing that they're no longer interested in taking down what are so-called racist statues or racist images. They're now moving to things that have nothing to do with race at all. So like you said, the University of Florida taking down the Gator bait chant. The University of Georgia, they play a song from Gone with the Wind at their football games. They say, hey, we're no longer going to be playing that. Dartmouth College, so they have a weather vane on campus on top of a spire that depicts a Native American, and they're saying, we're going to take that down. So we're getting more and more examples where colleges and universities are now taking anything down that doesn't have to do with race simply because the mob demands it, because the cancel culture is demanding it. I've talked to students on some of these campuses, and they're afraid to speak up. They disagree with the movement that their peers and that their university is taking, but that's where we are right now. Anything is unacceptable, everything is offensive, and unless we start standing up to these students and these groups, they will only continue to cancel things that are innocuous, things that really are part of our daily lives, things that are part of tradition and culture.
I think viewers would agree with you, Eduardo, that someone needs to stand up, but who would stand up from college? Are there students that agree with you? Are there students that do want to fight this?
There's students that are fearful. I talked to a group at the University of Florida who they say they plan, early in the fall when the football season starts, they say, we're going to still do this chant on campus. We're going to continue to do it. But I think it's looking at broader areas too. Any donors of these institutions, if you went to this school or people in the community and you see your school doing this, this is your chance to speak up and say, hey, I give a lot of money to you guys. Why are you going to continue to do this? There are other ways it can be done, but right now students are rightfully afraid. The cancel culture will only turn and go after them. They can't speak up. As an example, we had a student at Florida State University who was talking to his fellow peers about Black Lives Matter and why he sort of disagreed with them. They removed him from the student senate. They just kicked him out of student government. So it's a very difficult time right now. I would encourage students to speak up where they can. But, as you said, people are afraid right now.
Yeah, and again, I point this out enough. It is one thing to say Black Lives Matter. It's another to support the organization Black Lives Matter. You want to know more, simply read. Put it in Google, read what they're about. You'll find out. Eduardo Neret, digital reporter for Campus Reform. Thank you so much. Great work, all right?
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Still ahead, NASCAR release.